Welcome to the free webinar series, Take the Chance to Change Your Work. My name is Eva, I'm a psychologist and coach at CNU's Multilingual Therapy Institute, and I invite you to join this free online program that is designed to help you navigate the transitions you might need right now to make your work more meaningful. So today's second part of our series, Take a Chance to Change Your Work. We know this is a moment where many people need to take a moment to think about their work life, and that is the reason why we created this. Really want to make this a space for you to think about certain things and to tap into certain phenomena that always happen when change is occurring. And I'm doing that from the point of view of both coaching, job transition coaching, career change coaching, and psychology in the background, because that is what I do on a daily basis. If you don't know me, I'm a psychologist and coach at CNU's in Madrid, and I support people making changes in their work and making small changes, making big changes. Everything goes into here. Even if you've been here last week, just want to quickly remind you of certain things. When we talk about change, we talk about all types of changes. So that is both personal changes that have to do with things you need to change in your work, how you show up at work, so that you can have the ideal level of well-being, the ideal level of energy and commitment. And then we're talking about changes that are more on a systemic level, changes that affect the community that you're in. And that might be from the very small community of you and your partner, you and your family, into bigger entities like you in your team, you in your company, or you in the relationship with the bigger world, with the outer world. So here where we're talking about changes that have to do with sustainability, with taking responsibility that the crisis that we're living right now, the coronavirus crisis, might be wanting from us, bigger changes that have to do with this. So we talk about all types of changes. And today what we're going to do is we're going to focus on emotions. We need to understand emotions because you might have heard, it's a thing that has been talked about a lot, especially in the last years. It's more of a common ground. Emotions are signals. And we can talk about emotions are data, emotions are information. Emotions is just another type of information that we receive and that we need to understand, because this is where emotional intelligence happens, really understanding what are these emotions trying to tell me. So wherever you are in this part of your own journey in terms of questioning what you need to change about work, I just wanted to put out some situations that I've been talking about with my clients in the last couple of weeks. And there's one phenomenon that I've called the lockdown Stockholm syndrome, with a little bit of a smile and taking a little bit of humor in. What is Stockholm syndrome? Stockholm syndrome is when you've been kidnapped by someone and you fall in love with this person that has kidnapped you. So just to apply that to the situation of lockdown, if we have been at home for a couple of weeks, couple of months, whatever that in your case is, there might be a sense of, oh, I'm starting to like this, which feels weird because we know we don't really like it, but we get used to it. And over the weeks, we've also realized that there's some upsides of being at home. For some people, that is more present than for others. But one really striking thing that I mentioned in the little small videos that we've been doing this week, we did a little bit of a poll 2 weeks ago, and that was to a group of meditators. So we had about 100 people, and they were one of our groups in Habitar el Tiempo, where we do meditation workshops, where I'm in charge of the enterprise part of this. And we asked them, okay, are you excited to going back to normal life? Are you excited to going back to work? And the striking thing was that most people, 30%, the biggest group, said, I don't know. I'm not sure at all if I want to go back. And then the second biggest group said directly, no, I don't want to go back to normal. And that was striking because I didn't expect that from happening. The group who said, yes, I want to go back was just 12%. So I think that really made me think, what is it that we are falling in love with being in lockdown? Also, here is where that might be a certain emotional situation where you notice that being at home was good for you. Good in what sense? You know, is it that you're feeling more comfy at home because you suddenly realize that you had a lot of stress at work? Are you happy that finally you get some space where you can actually think about what you need to do instead of running from one meeting to the next? Or are you feeling that, well, actually, I'm just realizing that I don't like my work. I'm not really in love with my work. So being at home, it gave me this little breathing space that I'm going to miss. And so that's one type of emotions that we might want to listen to. And then there's obviously another type of emotion that is more negative in the sense of, I loathe this. I want to go back to normal. This is, I can't deal with this. And that can be obviously related to either the fact you don't have a job anymore to go back to, or you don't know if you're going to go back to your job. And that creates a whole different mix of emotions. So what we're going to do today is, like, I want to give you a certain kind of idea of what could emotions mean. And then we're going to go through a 4-step process that is based on a model that I presented last year at a conference. So the quote for today that is, was coined by someone called Adolphe Monod. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. He was French. He was a pastor. And he said, between the great things we cannot do and the small things we will not do, the danger is that we shall do nothing. Which is exactly what I think might be happening if we don't stop and listen to those emotions that we're feeling in this disruptive moment. It really is an opportunity, and that's the whole idea of the series, right? Take the opportunity. The crisis is an opportunity and it's a threat. And as we said last week already, our brain will just assume this is new, this is different, this is a threat. And our task, just going through this, to get everybody on the same page, the task is, what do I do with those threats that my mind is perceiving? So if you haven't seen this before, I really invite you to go to our YouTube channel, CNews, or my own YouTube channel, Impulsos Positivos. You have the video up there, so you can go back and just dive in what I want to say with these 3 big reactions. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to focus in specifically on part of that fight or flight response. So what does that mean? If I've been laid off, if I'm on an ERTE, like here in Spain, ERTE, like the temporary hold, or putting your work on hold, you're not working, and you don't really know what's going to happen. So if that's your situation, or if you're just moving out of a job situation and you don't really know what type of a change you want to do next, some very normal reaction is to feel that there is a lot of uncertainty ahead. And that's when we start thinking, oh, what if I don't find the right thing? What if I don't know how to engage in my work in a more positive way? And we go into overthinking mode. The emotions related to that are anxiety and agitation. And with that, what we really need to do is we need to own the responsibility that we have and let go of the responsibility that we really cannot own. Why am I saying this? Often when there's a lot of anxiety, the job of someone like me, even if it's in my job as a psychologist, is to really go through those emotions and start to discern, okay, what really needs an action and what does not need an action, or where is action just impossible. So we want to find out if my anxiety is a signal that says something's wrong here, pay attention. We need to then ask ourselves, okay, the things that I'm perceiving as wrong and needing attention, are they really my responsibility? And if they are my responsibility, can I own that responsibility right now? Or do I need to wait and do something else first, like calming down first, so that I can really live up to that responsibility? So let me talk about a specific situation. Imagine you've been working on a team, and in that team, things have gone not so great, right? So you've been working together for a couple of months, years, whatever that is, and you are now in lockdown and realizing there's a sense of relief that you don't have to be in your team. And there is a sense of anxiety when you think about going back to that situation. So if that's the case, we want to listen to that anxiety and asking, okay, so what does it really say? Does it say, I'm afraid that we're going to go back to talking to each other in this really nasty way, with a lot of stress in our voices, with a lot of pressure, without really managing our tasks in a way that is healthy for everybody. So this anxiety, it's pointing towards something where you have a personal responsibility, and then there might be a shared responsibility. So here, this is the overall idea of today's session, right? Listen to the emotion, because you need to then be able to say, okay, I hear it. I don't want to go back to a situation where people shout at each other. So the responsibility I'm going to own is I'm going to create a conversation about how we communicate in a team and asking my colleagues if they feel the same, etc., etc. Well, this is just one option that we can make. The other one would be saying, okay, but the fact is, it's not only my responsibility, right? Other things they have to do with maybe with just making some new commitments to with how much time in advance do we ask each other for things. So this has to do with an agreement that I need to reach with my colleagues. So the good thing here is, like, if you really listen into anxiety, it can tell you, you can realize which part you want to own. The same, I'm just drifting to this other emotion of anger that comes from the idea of things are happening that are not fair, things are happening that are not good, things are happening that's like really, it's not okay. So it gives us a lot of energy, like this fighter energy. And the fact is, again, you need to listen and then make some choices, because you need to choose the right battle. If there's just this morning, I had a conversation with a client who is very, very sensitive to injustice. And she really hit it home today when she said, you know what, Eva, there is so much injustice in the world. I can't get triggered by all of this because I don't have the energy. So she actually said that because she had been thinking about saying and speaking up to someone on her team about something that had been done that she didn't agree on. And she decided to not go for that communication. She said, I feel it's a waste of energy, and I'm actually choosing a different battle here. So she was not just sitting back and not doing anything. She discerned, okay, here is what I want to do, and I don't want to go in here because I don't think it's the right choice. So what do we need for that? We need to have a space to step back, really ask ourselves, okay, is this anger asking me to fight a battle that I can win? Or is it asking me to fight a battle with someone else, with the support of someone else? Or is this just anger that is a bit random, because really there's nothing I can do? So that's the kind of the journey that I want you to invite you on today with our little 4-step process, so that you can do that for yourself. So the first step obviously is to think about a certain situation. So you need to have a certain situation that you can use as an example for today's session. That could be any situation that has been causing heightened emotions lately. And I really want you to just choose one. What we want to remember throughout the process is emotions are just signals. They're not neither good nor bad. They just occur because a whole system reacts to something. They have a message. That's true for all emotions. That's what they're there for, to make us realize certain things. So what you need to do is to listen to them and then try to understand, what do they mean? The fact is that sometimes we have emotions that are overreactions. Often that has to do with the learning history. So if I've been in an environment that is really rough, I may be having a very high sensitivity for things being rough, which means that maybe in the future I'm going to overreact a little, to these things. So that's why we need to discern. One of the rules of thumbs that I really love sharing with my clients is allow yourself to feel everything you feel, but don't believe everything you think. It's kind of a rule of thumb in therapy, in psychology, and coaching. Emotions are all okay, they're all signals, listen to them, but if you start thinking too much, not everything that you're thinking that might be causing emotion is actually true. So that's kind of where we're going to start. And we're going to start with the idea of LEAP, which was coined last year when I was preparing a conference. The LEAP conference was held at IE University in Segovia, and it was about discomfort. And the idea was someone who survives the discomfort of negative emotions does it because he or she has learned to navigate emotions. I'm going to take you through the LEAP process so that you can do the same. And you can see this kind of this picture that just breaking free from your emotion often means like to really lean into them and make sure that you get the message. So step one, obviously, the L, very straightforward. You need to listen. What are your emotions saying? And you might be saying, like, if I don't know, I don't have a clue what my emotions are saying, because actually I'm a mess. In the sense of I'm feeling so many different things at the same time, and there's some anger, and here's some anxiety, and here's some feeling of stuckness and overwhelm. It's all mixed up. So that would be just as if, imagine you want to analyze business data. What's the first thing you do? You need to gather the data that is clean. Also, I remember that when I was working in the software consultancy, clean data was like our thing. It's like data needed to be clean, and data needed to be nice, so nice in the sense of, you needed to know what it was, and it needed to be good data, because otherwise nothing you could do with it. You couldn't analyze a portfolio if the data you had wasn't coherent. So with emotional data, it's just the same thing, right? So you want to make sure that first of all, you gather some information. How do we do that? What I do with my clients is very simple. You just take notice. You have your phone, you have a piece of paper, you have a document, whatever that is, and the next time you really feel something, you write down what it is. You don't need to know exactly what it is, but just, there is a little bit of anxiety, there's a little bit of that, there's a little bit of this, and there's a little bit of that. If you don't know the labels, it's a good idea to go online and search for lists of emotions that are available so that you can fine-tune your understanding of it. There's, for example, a very good website, Nonviolent Communication. They have lists of emotions that you can download. So once you have gathered that data, let's say for a week, you've really sat down, you've started to take notice of your emotions, you have gathered some data. The next thing you do, you analyze that data. Say, okay, analyzing it might mean that you realize that really the emotion that you're feeling most often is overwhelm. I'm overwhelmed. So what does that mean? I'm going to put up a slide in a second. What does it mean if my most present emotion is overwhelm? You could conclude that. You could also see that your emotions are shifting the whole time. And you might realize that it's one specific situation that is triggering that emotional state, which leads to a different conclusion. The conclusion is there is a certain thing present in my life that's really upsetting to me. That's really, really the core of why I'm feeling bad. Which is great news, because once you've identified the cause, you can actually go fix it or minimize the impact that it has. So again, you see, as I have the information, I can analyze it, and then I can draw some conclusions. The third type of conclusions that I often see is that people realize that actually they are also having a big mix of positive emotions, of negative emotions, but actually the only ones that are really making it onto the lists are negative. And if they look at it, they go, you know what, but it wasn't that bad of a week. It's not that everything is negative, which would then be an invitation to say, so what about the positives? When do you really feel, this is it, I love doing this, this is it, I need more of this? Or when a client last week, she said very clearly, when I'm talking to people, when I'm in my meetings, something lifts. It's really, I feel this is my thing, and I can relax into the interaction. A very clear pointer that people interaction and working on a team is vital to her well-being at work, and it's vital to how she makes a contribution. So having said this, in this listening process, gathering information, gathering the signals, analyzing them is key. And the question is, are there certain meanings that most emotions, or that the type of emotion conveys? And the answer is yes. So when we want to understand the information, I would like to go back to that idea of saying, like, every emotion being a signal, it's an opportunity to do something. So the opportunity to do something could come in the sense of, okay, I have detected a problem and I get angry, so I get angry because I feel that there's a boundary that's being overstepped. typical situation, you constantly realize that you're working after hours, and that even though there might be this company rule that you accept, that you respect work hours, it's not the case. It's not being done. So that's where you might feel some anger. The invitation of that, what's the opportunity if you identify an anger point in your life? The opportunity is you need to set some boundaries. Boundaries always when you feel I'm invaded by X, I'm invaded by people, I'm invaded by tasks that are not mine, I'm invaded by practices that I don't agree with. And it pushes my anger button. Another thing about anger is that below that anger, there often is a hurt, in the sense like there is something that is, it really hurts me when people maybe speak to me in a certain way. And the anger points to that. There's something or someone is damaging you here, and you need to heal that. And important to remember, sometimes you're feeling anger at something, at someone, but that person really isn't the cause. It's just pushing the same button. But the person really is not, and you know that for yourself. Okay, I'm overreacting to criticism because in the past, in my recent past, I had to deal with someone who criticized me the whole time. And it wasn't actually just me, this person was just critical overall, but that really left some damage, it really did some damage to me, and I'm still reacting to that, even though that person's not in my life anymore. So anger is always the invitation to that. Go set some boundaries. What is the damage that needs to be healed? If we're talking about anxiety, right, so we've got that information, and the signal is anxiety. How do I know it's anxiety? Unsettling feelings, a lot in our chest, in our stomach, sometimes it's in the head, so we get kind of dizzy or blurry, and there's a sense of fear. So what do we do with anxiety when we listen to anxiety? When we talk about danger, right? Anxiety is always this thing, there is some danger in the air, and it's different from fear, because fear is like danger is in my face. I know exactly what the danger is because it's here. Also, fear reaction is I'm walking down a street at night and I hear some steps behind me, and I get a surge of fear. That's not anxiety. I'm not anticipating anything. I can feel it. It's happening right now. So anxiety is always an anticipation. The question here to identify, to go deep on is, what's the real danger here? What's really something that I need to take care of right now? So what I'm feeling here is like many times when there's uncertainty around, the timing gets mixed up. So most of my clients, they will have an underlying sense of anxiety, and when we start listening to it, there are some messages saying like, short term, there is a real danger of maybe you going back to work and just getting back to normal when really you don't want to go back to normal. You want to make some changes. Long term, then the problem is, what if I don't make some changes, and then I will feel horrible, burned out, depressed, whatever it is, 2 years from now. So then we would really need to say, thank you, anxiety, I hear you, and I get the message. And actually, the long-term fear, I want to try to do something about it now. And then the short-term anxiety actually shows me what I need to do. Short-term anxiety says, you need to start fixing this, because otherwise you're going to end up in a place you don't want to end up. So here we've identified the parts of the anxiety that point to something that is actionable now. And if the anxiety points to something, number one, that is either not a real threat, and we would say, that's not a real threat, it's maybe possible, but it's unlikely. Like, for example, when you say, I'm 25 and I've been laid off because I was the last person to join, and then you go, I'm so afraid that I am always going to have horrible jobs because I'm not going to find one. That's a very long-term thing that, of course, it could happen, but it's unlikely to happen because, hey, you're 25 and you have a great education and you have experience and you have loads of opportunities in the job market, right? So that would be a type of anxiety where we would say, no, it's possible, but it's unlikely to happen. So put that aside. You don't need to worry about that. What you do need to worry about is right now, go get your CV ready, do some research, find out the industry you want to apply to, and then go do it, right? So Anxiety. Identify real dangers, discern the ones that you need to act on, kick out the ones that you don't want to act on. What about overwhelm? We talk about overwhelm when it's too much. And overwhelm is, I have loads of stuff happening at the same time. I'm trying to deal with just the fear of the pandemic. I'm trying to deal with my job. I'm trying to deal with figuring out what I really want to do with my life. And then people are calling the whole time and I can't take it anymore. What's the invitation? What's the opportunity when we detect overwhelm? The opportunity is, I know most of you will say, oh no, not that one. Learning to say no. Learning to say no. That's it's one of those things that most people really need to learn to say no. They hate the idea of it. I would put myself in that category. Something that I had to learn. And you just, really recommend it because it's such a great thing, because you're just choosing where you're going to put your energy. And then you can actually, everything that you do then is of higher quality, and you can do it with a much calmer state. Another thing of overwhelm might be that you have been doing a lot of things and you're doing them in a very complicated manner. Let me give you again an executive coaching example. I'm thinking about a client who had become a marketing director and was very successful, and things for a long period of time, she made things like with a lot of personal involvement. She built the team with a lot of personal involvement. She did so many things. She got so much support. So she was really very, very much loved by her team. And the thing is that it had been necessary because they had started off in a very, very difficult situation, and her personal involvement for those 2 years, it really marked the success of the team. But it was too complex for long term. She couldn't hold it up. So she needed to simplify how she was showing up as a leader. And she needed to start to get some help in the sense of getting some more support in some projects. She needed to start to assign more responsibility in her team and just let the other people take over responsibilities too, which actually was something that she loved doing. It just hadn't occurred to her that it was the moment. So it was really listening to her overwhelm that we found that out. It was not about her not liking her job. It was not about her not wanting to be there. It was just, I want to keep doing the same thing, but with less of an effort, more simple, more, the structures, just simplify things and get some help. Let's move on to the next one, which is, I put this emotion, I know it's a kind of a weird emotion, and I really put it because it's this lockdown Stockholm syndrome idea. And people who are realizing, I'm so happy that I'm not at work right now. So longing is the sense of, I feel I miss something. I could have put stuck here too, right? Feeling stuck could mean the same thing. So it's this idea of, I'm living my life, I'm doing my job, I'm doing what I've learned, and something's missing. I'm longing for something else. In the stuck sense, stuck often happens when what we're longing for is growth. So it's a very specific type of longing. Right? I'm longing for growth. I'm longing for development. I really want to move on. I've done what I'm doing for a long time. So I'm longing for change. What do we do with that? What's the opportunity behind that emotion? Identify what's missing and then go create it. I know that sounds much simpler than what it is, believe me. I know that I'm just talking about something it's a process. But again, even if it's a process, even if it will take some time, and sometimes that means months or even years, go start create that thing that you're missing. Go and start create the structures that you're missing. Simple examples, someone working in a profession, very technical, imagine architecture, and that person suddenly realized that he's a real expert in certain specific aspects of architecture that he really loves, and there's this longing to teach, being a teacher, becoming a teacher, to then starting to create a project, turning that dream or that fantasy, that longing, turning it into a project that actually has some steps and that you can follow through, and even though it will take whatever long it takes, you're already doing it. So that's the interesting thing with longing, with feeling stuck. The moment you've listened to the emotion, you've heard the message, and you get it going, there's a sense of relief. Right? There is a sense, because the emotion, you can imagine the emotion, it's like that little pilot in your car that goes off if you're running low on fuel. So if that little pilot goes off, the red thing, if you just turn this off, you would end up, on the road with no fuel because you didn't pay attention. So when an emotion is being heard, it's as if the pilot went away, but not because we've turned it off. It's because it served its function. So the little red pilot of the fuel tank, it goes off when you fill the tank, right? So then it has served its purpose and it goes away. And that's how we deal with emotions. We listen to them, I've got the message, you served your purpose, you can now leave. And if that process gets stuck, that's when we, can get some professional help with it. Last one, sadness. Especially, I think right now, maybe that's not the most present emotion anymore, unless we are just realizing the loss of structures, the loss of opportunities, the loss of projects, the loss of budgets, whatever that is. What's the message of sadness? I've lost something important to me. So I want to notice that. I want to realize that I have lost something. And maybe for that, I need to slow down a little bit, not reserve my energies, because with sadness, we don't have a lot of energy, and we want to reach out and get support, whatever support that is. If that is, imagine in a team, you've realized you had this big product in your pipeline and suddenly it's become irrelevant because of the coronavirus, and it was something that would have brought a lot of joy to your team, or it would have brought a lot of income, a lot of turnover, whatever that is. And it's gone. And you've decided to not go for it. And that's kind of a damper, on your spirits. So you need to slow down for a little bit and then get some and slowly get it back on track, whatever your product pipeline is going to be like for the next months. So again, sadness is all about integrating what's lost. And this is important because if we just act as if nothing had happened, we might be running in completely wrong direction. And if I'm not realizing this thing is not an opportunity anymore, or this job is not in my life anymore, I've lost it, or this industry, this client is not going to come back and produce and order things, we need to integrate that because it needs to become part of our strategy. Also, I'm talking, as you can see, I'm talking personal level, I'm talking business level, and because the emotions, they apply to everything, to whatever type of trigger that is. It can be personal, it could be professional. So this is, again, all part of step one of this really listening to the emotion. I gave you some hint here. Step number 2 of understanding emotion is exploring. It's all about the E of leap. Exploring and experiencing the energy. Why? People go like, no, I don't want to experience the energy of anxiety by no means. I hate the feeling of anxiety. Or I don't want to feel the energy of anger because it's really unsettling. I know that, that's the purpose of emotions feeling uncomfortable, because they want to be heard. So they need to be very loud and very uncomfortable. So the thing is, emotional energy it might feel uncomfortable, but remember, we want to navigate the discomfort. So how could we look at that? Imagine the situation here in the picture. We have someone who is a team leader. I pictured a woman here who is kind of being very critical and being maybe very nervous about the outcome, and therefore chooses some manners that are not really appropriate. And actually, she's the first person to know that her anger is not showing in an appropriate way. So the interesting thing here, if I work with anger and choose anger for this, because it's a very uncomfortable and very explosive emotions, we might be really afraid of showing that. When anger comes up, it's a reminder. It's a reminder of saying, hello, we're back in the same situation where I start to get angry. And we want to notice the energy as soon as it comes up, because then we have more time to act on it. So the idea here is, if you have a recurring situation that triggers your emotions, you already know that, so you can get prepared for it. So in this case, it could be something like, whenever someone shows me some work and I don't think it's appropriate, instead of becoming very critical, I want to ask a question first. That's my intervention. Instead of going in and criticizing, I'm going to ask a question and understand why they did it that way. So the emotional energy is a reminder, now is your time to act differently. So therefore, we need to learn to be with that energy. Why? If I'm angry in this team situation that we're picturing here, and I can't stand the emotion, I will do whatever it takes to get rid of it. And you know what? The easiest way of getting rid of anger is to have an outburst, to do something that is wah, or to swallow it. Both are not healthy. So if I can learn to increase my capacity to be with this anger, I can also step back and say, okay, even though there is some sense of anger, I don't need to jump to screaming. I don't need to jump to criticizing. I don't need to jump to completely shutting down, which would be a different way of dealing with it. Another interesting thing here is when we learn to experience and explore that energy, we can also go back to that emotion. So if I often feel anxiety, I'm not really sure again what it means. And today at 2 p.m., I really had a surge of anxiety and I had no clue where that came from. If I'm okay with that energy, at 7 p.m., I can go back and say, okay, today at 2, I was really not feeling good. What was going on? Right? I can allow myself to think about it. So how do we make this practical? Experiencing the energy. Well, really, it sounds very simple, but it's this idea of, if I'm in a situation where I feel that, how am I feeling it? How does it, if I was just an explorer, or as a very beloved teacher of mine says, if you were an alien in a human body and you'd never experienced anxiety before, you wanted to pay attention. Oh, what is this? Is there some tingling? Is there some feeling of pressure? What is the energy? And you get used to it so that you don't have to run away. So why do we do that as a second step? Because actually it's necessary and able to do step 1. So again, you might start to want to listen to an emotion, but as you listen to it, the energy starts to creep into your body, that nervous energy, and it's so uncomfortable, you stop. It's like, no, if I'm not going to listen to my emotions, it's too overwhelming. So then we need some practice, right? And the practice is all about just experiences. There will be some physical representations. They're not an enemy. They are physical. They're going to go away, and even though they're uncomfortable. So it's really making peace with that fact. The next step is this huge question, and that's often where we spend most time, both in coaching and in therapy. The big question, is this emotion, the message, is this something that I need to act now, or do I need to accept it and wait? And often the response is both. Why? Because there's always a next step. There's always something that we can do now, so to move from where we are a little bit more in the direction for where we want to be. Let's make that again specific to a situation. Let's imagine you have studied and you just finished a master's and you thought you would go into the world and get a job. And suddenly you have coronavirus and you don't know where you're going to get that job. So you know you have a lot of potential, that's why I put this picture here, and you really want to show your potential, you want to make it happen, you want to perform, you want to do a great job, and suddenly it feels like you can't. And you get very nervous. And the fear is, I'm not going to find, anxiety is, I'm not going to find a job. So you get hyperactive and you just do whatever it takes, and you send a gazillion CVs and you don't even care anymore, what is it for? And then you come to coaching and you say, but if I'm doing so many things, nothing's coming from it. And the sense is, okay, stop. Stop first. Because what you're doing is hyperactivity and impulsivity. And doing whatever never really works. It can really make you end up in a place where you don't want to end up. The extreme example would be someone who just finished the huge financial masters in financial things, and then ends up working in a restaurant. But there's nothing against working in a restaurant, maybe that's exactly what you want to do, you want to open a restaurant. But the thing is, this person never thought about working in a restaurant. So it's just something that I do out of that hyperactive thing where I need to act now. So this question often leads to saying, yes, let's do something now, but let's also accept where you are, and let's just look at where you are right now as a starting point. As with the GPS system, in order to bring you where you want to go, first needs to calculate where you are right now. right? And depending on that calculation, it then gives you the best route to where you want to go. So what are the ingredients we need? We need a starting position, we need a goal, we need to know where I want to end up. And then with these two things and the current environments, we start to make a plan. And it's just with this GPS system, in case you get lost along the way, it doesn't really matter. The GPS system will just recalculate how you get there. And that's what we want to emulate in our lives. We want to define a next step, and we need to accept where we are. Because if we don't accept where we are, how are we going to find the next right step? Right? Let's go back to this GPS idea. If I'm in Valencia, but I don't want to be in Valencia, and I'm telling myself, no, I'm not in Valencia, I'm in Barcelona, because I can't deal with the fact of being in Valencia. And I put that as a starting point. My GPS would just go crazy and not know where to go, because the fact is, I'm in Valencia. So emotionally, if I just got laid off, the fact is I just got laid off. And I can't go like, oh, maybe in 3 months from now, they would realize that they need me and they're going to get me back on the team, which could be the case, but maybe not. So I'd rather accept, okay, I've been laid off. And then from there, I can go and take a first step saying, okay, let me first figure out what's all the experience that I have, all the strengths that I have, what can I bring into a team, etc., etc. So there is a strategy. And in that strategy, we follow a process, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it's neither impulsive nor hyperactive. It's something that we can do with a certain sense of poise and ease. And that's often the difference between a job and transition that just happens, out of circumstances pushing you, which is what happened to me, circumstances pushing me to make a job transition, to doing it as a process with some strategy behind. This is what I do with my clients. So last step for today, and I'm sorry I have the put on your own mask first thing from last week still on here, some copy pasting apparently. So we're in understanding emotions, and the last step is about persisting and practicing patience. And I put your patience in luck. So like, how can a coach talk about luck? Well, just because I've realized that sometimes it is luck that happens in people's lives, and that's absolutely fine. We just cannot hope for the luck to happen. We need to do both. We need to get going, start with the first step, and then also have a little bit of trust that once you get moving, things will start to happen. And this is not in a woolly type of thing. It's just saying like, you don't need to know what exactly is going to happen, but you need to get going. You need to start practicing things. And with practice, I mean doing things repeatedly. And doing things repeatedly might be, going back to our anger example, I want to practice being in meetings when things don't go my way, not losing it. And I need to practice that because it's not coming naturally to me. That's one example. Another example is I need to do interviews and I don't know and I don't feel comfortable. So practice, don't just apply to the things that you really love. Apply to many things and do interviews. Start to get used to it and practice. And the practical way of doing that is something that has been called triggers by the author of the book with the same name. I always forget the name. The book is called Triggers. I think it's Marshall something. And the idea is that every day you put up a trigger question, or every day you have a trigger question that will trigger a certain behavior. And that could be what I'm going to do today to find my next career move is, and you write it down. Or you frame it the other way. When I'm going to engage with that particular project that makes me nervous, I'm going to think twice before I act, because I've realized that I always fall into impulsivity. So you identify some very, very specific things that you can do on a repeated basis, and that will also make a very good use of that emotion that you felt. In the sense of my emotion was telling me I'm not relating in a way that I want to relate. So what I'm doing, like every day, I am having a practice of connecting with people in a friendly way, in an assertive way, in a put the way that you want to put, and put the thing that you want to practice, and you're doing it, and you're already looking at it as a practice, as opposed to something I need to get fixed for once and for all. No, it's a practice. So this is kind of the framework. I'm just looking at the world. We don't have that much time left. So question here to you, we're not that many people on the call today. So what I'm going to do is just give you the possibility to unmute your phone in case you want to do that, or you can just send me a message in chat. Actually not being able to do this. So I'm activating. Everybody can now use your audio. So what's on your mind in terms of emotional? What are you feeling lately? You can also send me a chat message. I would be happy to hear some things of you. What are the emotions that are coming up for you? How do you come up with your own goal? Really good question, right? So in this kind of, this probably driven by that GPS metaphor, what I always work with values. And values in the sense of what are the things that I really value in my life. And I use the idea of a horizon. So you're walking towards, you're going in a certain direction. So when you're walking in a certain direction, we want to have a sense of a compass that's showing me, you know, where am I going? So that's when our values come into play. You'd say, okay, I value, for example, I value certain sense of financial stability. So I want to be working in something that's financially would give me a good income. And I really value that. And on top of that, I value creativity. Or on top of that, I value growth. So I want to be in an environment where I can grow. So you start to come up with 5, maximum 6 different values that you think will be very important in the next phase of your life, and you start to prioritize them. And that will be the compass, right? It will show you, am I moving towards more financial stability? Yes or no? Am I moving towards more creativity? Yes or no? And then that really helps us to test certain options. So if I today have 5 options that I've come up with, or that other people have come up with, people are telling me, oh, you should be doing this, oh, you should be doing that. You go back to your values and you think, okay, option number 1 is in line with which values? Is option number 1 about becoming a business consultant? And business consulting is all about competitiveness, high pace, whatever else. And then you go like, well, that's not on my list of values. I don't really want that. So it wouldn't be the best goal for you. So by really looking at goals, by looking at values, we can clarify certain goals. And the other thing is you might also look to other people for inspiration, and then just imagine yourself in that situation, not in a sense of comparison, just going out there and saying like, so this type of work that this person that I admire, a person that is very relevant for me, what do they do? What could I identify with? You know, because sometimes it's really helpful to see other people living a lifestyle that we really feel is attractive. Now that might be an important pointer to things that are also important for you and not very important. Don't copy that person. Just realize what are the elements in that life that you find are appealing, and then you turn them into something that is more in line with you as a person, with who you are as a person. How to determine what's missing? Oh wow, malaria. That's a big one. That's a big one. So again, it starts with that really tuning in with that longing, with this feeling of stuckness, or with this feeling of frustration, and listen to what comes with it. You know, is it a sense of, oh, I wish this could be different. I wish there was more freedom in my job. Or I wish there was more teamwork in my, I wish there was, you know, what comes after this? I wish there was. So the difficulty is often, you know, when we can't maybe separate that emotion from the others. So we can turn it around into positive, and again, go back to that idea of values, you know, looking at values, and then go back and say, like, what are the things that I think are important, but that are not present in my life? So it goes back to the same idea. We would just work with it a little bit differently. No, Leslie, sorry. No, don't be sorry at all, because that's real life, right? These are the questions that come up when we work in identifying the change that we need to make. Being conscious of time here, I'm wondering if there's something else that you wanted to ask, emotions that are happening. Please feel free. I'm looking at the chat, but I want to move on to closing the session off, and something that you might be wondering, I think the questions that you're asking, they're actually asking about the how. How do I identify what's missing? How do I move on towards a goal? So next week, as you know, this is a monthly Friday webinar at 3 p.m. Spanish time. So next week, we're going to talk about strength. We're going to talk about evidence-based strategies to really figure out the how. How am I going to go about this? So please stay tuned. Next week, we're going to meet and talk about strength. And if you feel that you need some support, this is our offer from Sinews during the lockdown, during quarantine, minimum until the end of May. We're offering all our online career transitions coaching for 85 euros a session, which normally it's 100. And that would be with me, or also with my colleague Letitia, who's also doing career coaching. When do we need support? When we really we want to take care of ourselves, but we feel guilty, we're doubting, we really can't come up with a goal, not sure, not able to identify anything positive, or even those questions, that you raised. I will make sure to bring in something about values next session, because I think the questions that you asked, they're really spot on. So my promise to you, next week, we're going to talk about strengths and values, because they have a lot in common. And actually, I always work with a combination of both of them. So yeah, I hope this is helpful, and it would be lovely to see you next week again on our webinar. Thank you so much for being part of this. Thank you, Maria. Oh, just realizing another question here from Jack. Are you feeling several emotions you listed at the same time? How do you prioritize? Intensity. Intensity, the one that's most intense, we should go for first, because especially if it's a negative emotion, it has the power to push us in a vicious cycle. So more intense means more relevant for you. There could be something going on where a very intense emotion doesn't necessarily mean it's actually the one that needs some action, but it's the one that needs to be understood first. So that's my rule of thumb here for emotions. Thank you so much, and speak to you soon.